Be so kind. Oh, if you'd be so kind to check out this video link for the first 5 minutes. And as you're doing so, if you'd be so kind to write down your impressions specifically on establishing online class norms, okay? Or just class norms in general. As you go through your impressions, your notes, they ask is this, write down what to do or sort your impressions to this line here on what to do at one end and what not to do at the other end and what could be done maybe some of the time in the middle, okay? That's the ask for the first 5 minutes here as you're all trickling in. And it goes without saying, so glad you're all here, okay? All right, folks, as we are nearing the end of the practice here, if you'd be so kind to give me a thumbs up or either with the icon or with your fingers, your videos here, when you're ready to go. One more minute. Thank you, Ben. Okay, folks. Looking to your list with what you've got, if everyone could please write out what to do when establishing class norms first on the Zoom chat here, but don't press enter yet. We're going to do a Zoom waterfall, okay? So please look into your list all the way on one side of your line, write down what to do to establish class norms, all right? Okay, and on the count of three, everyone press enter, okay? 1, 2, and 3. None of what this person did. Ebru, to list the items on the syllabus as well, okay, to be clear and transparent from the get-go. To agree with Ben, an excellent, an excellent response as well. LOL, yes, from Rebecca. I'm assuming that's for all of the points above. How about this? Same thing. Thinking to your list, folks. Oh, openly assessing feelings on epistemology. Okay, thank you so much, Michael, as well, for sharing that. So, folks, on the opposite end, if you'd be so kind to write down things not to do. Okay, so things not to do. That will be a little bit easier for folks that to not do the things that we shouldn't be done. But for folks, the opposite then would be what should we not do in trying to establish class norms? Okay, so let's take a few seconds here. Don't press enter quite yet. All right, 1, 2, 3. Press enter. Teresa, unclear expectations. Discuss student clothing and looks. Right. Rebecca, that is totally fine. Good. Absolutely. That is the right response. No text to read from an assignment. No rubric. An appropriate manner. Comments on names. Sure, sure, sure. So here's the deal, folks. I'm really delighted to share with you practices today that fall under this thing called Autonomy Supportive Teaching. A lot of the practices today are going to fall in that first part of your line or on the one side of your line. They're pretty intuitive, and a lot of the practices that we don't do will fall on the other side of that line as well. These are not necessarily things that take a lot of thinking to appreciate, but they are hard. They require a little bit more practice for us to make habit. Okay, but let's get on with it here. And I'd like to just establish this as we're going through this. This is a discussion. If you have any questions, if you have any wonderings, please, please, please ask, okay? And we'll address them in turn. Because if you're wondering them, more likely than not, someone else is thinking the same thing too. Okay, so let's get started here. So we have some guiding questions to structure our review today. The first one is, what is this thing called autonomy supportive teaching? The second part of our discussion, our review, are principles and practices. We'll talk about what they mean and what they can look like. And I'll share with you how I've incorporated them into my undergraduate coursework as well. And of course, we'll do some practice in pairs or in small groups. I think it'd be really fun for folks to go into a breakout session here and to chat with each other and envision how they can apply these principles and practices in their own courses. And last but not least, how can we envision it for our own courses as well? Let's get started. So what do we mean by this thing called autonomy supportive teaching, AST? What are its assumptions? Folks, let's unpack the underlying principles first. Autonomy refers to the extent that a person perceives they can act in accordance with their own preferences, interests, readiness, goals, and or values, rather than from coercion, pressure, or mandate. The parallel constructs of agency and choice come into mind here. It does draw from this thing called self-determination theory, which, among other claims, asserts that folks have basic human psychological needs, right? Autonomy, competency, and relatedness. And that we can think of these as nutrients. You can't really thrive, you can't really flourish, you can't do the work of thinking, of working, of living without these psychological nutrients, having more of them rather than a deficit of them. Crucially, We care about these nutrients because, and this is something that is a major bugaboo in higher education circles now, and achievement, in discussions around student achievement, it's because all of these together, having them precludes internalized motivation, or supports internalized motivation over externalized motivation, okay, to start and to stick with tasks. Now, if we know what autonomy is, then autonomy supportive teaching is a teaching approach that is marked by both a mindset and a set of instructional moves to shore up rather than thwart student autonomy over the entire course of the instructional cycle, from planning, from delivery, and assessment, okay? So just a way to contextualize this thing called AST, it does fall under self-determination theory, which again speaks to these psychological nutrients of competence, autonomy, and relatedness, but more specifically, we'll be hitting up this thing called autonomy, which has had an outsized influence on student achievement, okay? And the reason why we care is because all three together here push our students towards more internalized motivations for the task of learning, the entire task of learning. All right. Now, if we know what autonomy supportive teaching is, what can we compare it against? What can we contrast it against? Well, there's another sort of teaching approach called controlling teaching, and that's a mindset and a set of moves that together bid students to acquiesce, comply, or conform to the instructor's preferences, interests, readiness, goals, or values from the entire instructional cycle. And we don't necessarily have enough time here to do this exercise, but how about this? These are some of the major tells, the look-fors of this thing called controlling teaching. And it's like you all alluded to, some of these points are what you alluded to in our activation exercise, right? Setting rules without an explanation, presenting without explaining, not taking questions, invalidating a student's background, their context, their feelings, their thinking, the use of threats and punishments, and more often than not, just referring to our observing events and interpreting events from the teacher's perspective rather than just the student's perspective, okay? So how does AST contrast with controlling teaching? You might be thinking, well, isn't it a given that all of us, all folks engage in AST in some way or another? Because isn't it the whole point of education, especially college education, to prepare self-regulated individuals? Well, not necessarily, because a lot of our research does point to how we often default to controlling teaching. And the question then that arises is why? And why would this be the case? Well, familiarity, we tend to teach the way we were taught. Ease, admittedly, it's a lot easier to just take things from your own perspective and to do things the way you've always known them. And of course, inertia, behavioral inertia. It must be said that AST and CT exist on opposite ends to a continuum. They're of degrees. They're not a dichotomy like an on and off switch. And what does this mean for us as practitioners, as educators? It means we can work on nudging the needle towards more rather than less of an AST mindset, and to adopt the moves of AST piece by piece rather than all at once. As we go in the next few sections here on the principles and practices of AST, I'd exhort you to consider this, that you can work on one thing at a time rather than trying to do everything all at once, okay? So what? Why do we care? Here's the thing, right? We're talking about AST, we're comparing it to controlling teaching. Why do we care? Because at the end of the day, AST has yielded outsized, or has pointed to the outsized influence of how when we support students' autonomy, it predicts both engagement and achievement across multiple contexts. We're talking K through 12, college, in-person, online, liberal arts, and sciences, okay? It works. It has an abundance, a preponderance of evidence that speaks to it working, all right? Okay, let's get started here. So we're establishing the case for what AST is and why we should care. Let's talk principles and practices. And for this, folks, I'd really want to just open up for discussion as we go through the different principles here. And if you have any questions, just to say so, just to write it in chat, just to say it out loud, okay? And let's get started. So for the purpose of our review today, we've got 7 principles and practices of this thing called AST. We'll talk terms and we'll give an example of each as we go through each one in turn. And a lot of these are intuitive. A lot of these are not rocket science, but it helps to hear them. The first one here is to take the student's perspective. You'll find here in this chart that it's the anchor principle from which all the other practices and principles derive from. But taking students' perspective here doesn't just mean anticipating what the student needs at that very moment, but it really does mean taking the student's perspective through the entire instructional cycle, and in addition to their affect, and in addition to their intellectual readiness. Okay, it means truly absorbing yourself in the student's take, how they would approach it, how they would make sense of it, and how would they respond to it. The second principle here is to invite students to pursue their interests, and that often leads to, that could be rephrased as affording student choice, okay? Letting students take initiative, giving students multiple options and means to not just interpret what you're trying to get at, but to participate and to be assessed as well. A major theme of our discussion is this, that AST doesn't have to just be at the planning stage, it could be at all parts of the instructional cycle. You can support autonomy in permitting the students to have choice in how they work on weekly assignments. You can have students have choice in how they engage with their peers during class. And you can embed choice for students when you try to figure out if they learn something or not, okay? The second principle here, or the third principle here, is to present learning activities in need-satisfying ways. And that means, well, when we are structuring our environments, when we are structuring our assignments, are we for sure aligning it to those basic nutrients, those nutrients of relatedness? Are we fostering relationships? Or are we embedding opportunities for students to foster relationships with their peers or to learn from their peers as a matter of relatedness? Are we giving students scaffolds to build incrementally towards competency, towards mastery of whatever skill or subject we're trying to convey? And last but not least, are we giving students choice? Okay, so that would be presenting learning activities in a way that they're somehow linked in fostering those nutrients. Whew. Okay, show of thumbs real quickly. How are we doing so far? I know it was a whole lot in just the past few minutes here. If there are any questions before I proceed with the next few set of principles and practices here. A thumbs up from Ben. Teresa and Becca, thank you so much. Feel free to push back and put on the brakes here. Thank you, Jen. Okay, so we have those three principles and practices so far. Let's keep going here. Provide explanatory rationales. And this one is to model, to verbal. Thank you so much, Ebru, and I think Michael as well. But this particular principle means over the course of lecturing, over the course of presenting, it's to verbalize your thinking, to get in the habit of actually talking out loud and explaining why you're doing what you're doing and why you're covering what you're covering and the next steps and why you would be pursuing those next steps, okay? So as a case in point, an example of this, when I'm teaching my classes, all right, I verbalize this. All right, we just covered this topic right now, and I think it would behoove us to explore this next connecting topic. Why? Because if we don't explore this topic, we will have a partial understanding of this first thing, and we would not be able to really appreciate the gravity of this first thing. So the reason why providing explanatory rationales is so crucial here as a highlight is I think we presume that our students are experts already, or that they should be quickly, and that when we present something that they can immediately make the connections and that they can immediately appreciate the nuance, the considerations behind that very thing or that skill. Providing explanatory rationales serves as a powerful scaffold, a powerful structure to model how an expert would understand their craft, their discipline, their subject matter. And that's why this is such a crucial principle, okay? The next principle we practice here is to acknowledge negative feelings. This one means, it seems intuitive, it seems easy to grasp, but it really means not just when someone says that this is hard, saying, oh no, it's easy. It's really just sitting with that feeling and letting that student process that feeling and validating that feeling that, yeah, it is hard, that this is a tricky subject, or this is a very tricky skill to get the first time, the second time, the fifth time. And even if anyone else got it, if it's hard for you, it's hard for you. It's not, this is where a lot of the critique to AST AST is where do we strive to preserve the integrity of the discipline, right? Certain parts of our discipline are hard. They are hard. But I think we forget that when a person's coming into it new as a novice, we forget that it was challenging and that it's okay for it to be challenging. And this is where we can acknowledge those negative feelings, those setbacks, those difficulties with the subject. The next principle here is to rely on invitational language, and that is to really take the learning process. And you'll find that a lot of this can be really fuzzy, but what this translates to in one way is to invite the students to be learners together in your discipline, and to invite the learners to take charge to own the discipline as well as they set forth on it. And the last item here is to display patience, which is really just to slow down and to take the students where they're at, if they're succeeding, if they're not, and to just be there and to be present with them as they are going through the learning process. So, 7 principles here, but what does this look like, right? A whole lot of yada, yada, yada here. Let's anchor it in some concretes with the class that I've been teaching. All right, so this is Education 380. It is called Culturally Responsive Teaching. It is a course that I've had the privilege of teaching several semesters now. And let's talk about how we can embed AST at the planning stage. I think it helps to think about AST in terms of planning and the moment of delivery. Okay, so this is straight from the syllabi of my course policies here. And the first item here is this. I'd like to just highlight how a lot of it is explicit, but more importantly, it's invitational. I am inviting the students to not just know what they need to do, but what I need to do as well for them. This is a crucial part here, is just to really solicit their feedback as to to really actively engage them in a dialectic of, hey, this is happening, what are you thinking? And I'm thinking this, what are you thinking? And that's why I've embedded a policy where students are strongly encouraged to ask questions on a group Brightspace module, Brightspace discussion thread. The other idea here of honoring where the students are at and trying to really accommodate their readiness, give them flexibility, choice again for where their contexts are at. They have a late assignment policy here, where at the end of the semester, they have 24 hours to revise and resubmit any major assignment. No questions asked. No questions asked, truly. And there's also 2 mulligans for them for the weekly participation as well. So at least in this way, at the policy level, at the planning stage, I'm trying to head up these different principles in tandem, really honoring students. I think we forget that choice doesn't just mean choice in modality, but choice in time. Time is a precious resource that we all take for granted. And I think if we give our students flexibility in time, that they will honor it in turn. We have a question. Michael, what would you estimate percentage-wise of students who take advantage of late submitting a major assignment? That is a great question, Michael. Historically, it's been, if I have about 100 students or so, 5% of students would take advantage of that. This past semester, though, it was a little gnarly, I'll be real with you. It was about probably 20%. I don't know what it was, but it was an outlier semester this past semester. Okay, it was a little daunting because someone did have to grade them. So yeah, it was different. It was certainly different. But thank you for asking that question. So Teresa, using a flexible due date model for my students. Yeah, Teresa, that would speak to this principle here, or multiple principles here, of displaying patience, inviting students to choose their timetables, which would be an element of choice, okay, and autonomy as well. So here in this instance, at the planning stage, I'm trying to embed, at least for this course, AST. Before I proceed, what questions might we have, if at all? And just give me a thumbs up if you're feeling pretty good, if you have no questions at this juncture. And apologies if I'm talking real fast. I made the choice of drinking coffee right before this presentation. All right, let's keep proceeding here. Thank you, Michael, for feedback. Okay. Going back to more of the planning stage here. And this one, I like this. In this course, there's a weekly participation assignment, and what it means here is for the students to be present and to also submit an exit ticket of what they've learned that past week. I'd like to just highlight this, that they have multiple options on how to engage in this weekly assignment. They can work as a solo or a partner as a group. They are encouraged, exhorted to connect what they learned with their prior coursework and with their on-site practices. They also have multiple different venues to structure this exit ticket, one of 7 or one of 8 here, and even at the end, if none of these options work best for them, they can talk with me, they can contact me to come up with a different option as well. Here is probably the most overt attempt to really strive to honor students' choice and also to support their autonomy and how they make sense of the work, how they make sense of the coursework experiences as well. All right, but also a point here that I'm really trying to connect it to their personal stakes, to where they're coming from, that if they are honoring so much time and money to this course, well, strive to make it meaningful to themselves, okay? And which lends me to my next point here. Now, we've been talking about embedding AST at the planning level, those principles and practices at the planning level. What could that look like at the delivery level, at the moment of delivery? Well, short of a video recording, I didn't have one ready to go, but my PowerPoints, my lecture presentations are structured where at the start we review these muddy points. I go through the kiddos' exit tickets and I review major themes and patterns to the last meeting's content, what their questions were, what their aha moments were, and we spend the first 10, 15 minutes of class talking about them, addressing them. So it is really trying to invite the students to take ownership of their learning and to co-construct meaning out of what they reviewed for that past meeting. So we do a muddy points review at the start, okay? And over the course of instruction, I have for my course a little Amazon tchotchke where when I press it, it makes a cha-ching sound, and I press it when a student asks a question, when a student pushes back on what I've said during the middle of class, or when they seek clarification, and I usually press it and I say, hey, you're making good on the tuition money you're spending, right? And again, it's really that idea of invitational language that they are putting in. Hopefully they're getting out as much as they're putting in. And truly, truly, truly just trying to hit up this idea that, hey, you have a choice in being here right now. You're committing time and money to be here. All right. So I think to honor time, we won't be preparing a limerick today of our last couple of sections here. I'd like to shore it up for practice here for us. So folks, as I try to set up breakout rooms here, I'm thinking as a small pair and as a group, how can we envision and embed the principles and practices of AST with our own colleagues' courses in planning and in delivery? So let's try to make good on the principles and practices here with our own courses. So we've got several people here. John, if you'd be so kind to do breakout rooms for folks, that would...
Sure.
Oh, one more time, John.
Don't have a microphone right there. Sorry. How many rooms would you like?
I think just 2 would be swell, just to keep it simple and clean. And the ask here, folks, is as you're going through your breakout rooms, thinking to your courses in terms of planning and delivery, where can you embed opportunities for these principles and practices? And again, think of these really as principles, okay? And yeah, let's do about 5 minutes to this, and we'll come back. Thank you, John.
Well, thank you. Sorry for the late start here.
No sorries at all. I appreciate you.
Restarting the recording.
Sounds good. All right, I think we can bring people back. Hi, Michael. All right, welcome back, Rebecca, Teresa. Let's see. Hi, Ben, welcome back. Welcome back, Jen and Ebru. So, folks, how about this? I believe we end at 11:50. John, is that correct? Okay. How about this? Real quickly, a keyword snapshot of your discussion, okay? Just to ground your discussion. Ben and Ebru, you were together. Rebecca, Teresa, Jen, Michael, and you were together as well. What would be a keyword that captures your discussion? Oh, excuse me, the chat. Beginning. What do you mean, Michael? Unpack it.
Feel free to unmute.
And while we're waiting here, Ben and Ebru, what would be a keyword? Ah, Rebecca, realizing the levels of autonomy students are capable of. Yeah. And we did have a little discussion on this, right? We have to meet students where they're ready. And autonomy presumes a certain level of readiness, right? Yeah, you don't give your 5-year-old car keys. So it is. So it is with also the learning process too. Again, there's nuance to this. Yeah. Ben and Erbu.
I was mainly, I latched on to, you made a comment about the controlling teaching where you're setting out how the parts of an assignment. And so I was just, maybe I'm misreading it. Like if we're giving a paper, should we not require an outline, a bibliography, a rough draft, or Ever was saying it's the focus on the front end, like let them choose that, but still keep those structural controls, I guess. Right?
Ben, that's a wonderful question. And John and Rebecca brought my feet to the fire on this over the podcast session. But it's this idea of how do you thread the needle between honoring student autonomy and preserving the basic outputs of what's expected of them, right? I think we can think of AST as trying to shore up the students' participation and engagement with the discipline. The license, the skill, the product, the video, the essay, that's there. It has to be there. But everything leading up to that, that's where the ask of AST is. Everything leading up to that final product, where can you have the students have that choice? So going to the exit ticket, the essential task of the exit ticket is to give formative feedback. They have many different paths and venues to do the work of giving formative feedback to the meeting. I think we can think of the essay in the same vein. If the idea of an essay is to really demonstrate your reasoning, your thinking, your capacity to use words coherently, right? Where can you embed opportunities for students to exercise their choice, to let them take ownership of that all up until that final essay? How much of that makes sense? Okay. Thank you for asking that. All right, so here's the deal, folks. When you do get a chance, when you do get an opportunity, the ask after our meeting today is this: where can you envision these 7 principles in your own courses. And I would like to just take this moment to say that to focus on just one principle for one class at a time. The principles and practices won't go anywhere anytime soon. So really, and the fact and recognition that life happens, that the school semester is going to be starting and you've got all these other different obligations as faculty, just choose one of these and see where you can embed it. Okay, you'll find that when you use one, it's motivating. It's mighty motivating. You can pick up another and see where it works well. That is it for our meeting. Oh, absolutely. Let's see. If everyone would be so kind to, I've got several people's emails here. Ben, Jen, Teresa, let's see, Rebecca, Michael, I believe we're all at, yeah, cheers. Thanks for carving time and energy, folks, for being here. Teresa, I believe you're at SUNY Oswego. I think the only email I'll need. Ebru, are you at SUNY Oswego as well? I'm still new to the
Yes, I am SUNY Oswego, yeah.
Hey, fantastic. Okay, I'll find all of you here, and I wish you a very wonderful Monday. Be well. Bye, Ben. Bye, Ebru. Bye, Teresa. Thank you for sending your email. Bye, Jen. Bye, Teresa. Again.
Thank
Bye.
you, Jed.
Thank you, John.